Welcome back to another exciting beekeeping episode. I'm Steven.
And I'm Luke.
My best beekeeping buddy. We usually start talking about what we've done in the yard, around the yard for the past week or two. I think at the top of my list has been I got arm twisted into moving some hives.
Roped into is a good
because it turns out moving hives at the middle of spring and start of summer is really a two-person event. If you don't have commercial lifting equipment, it is really a two-person event.
Well, we even had a piece of equipment that we thought was hive lifting.
Yeah,
was
not so much.
It is not. It is 100% for supers.
Yeah,
and that was I had purchased somebody out of their equipment that is retiring, and they actually dropped it off as, hey, by the way, I have these too. And I thought, oh, that's great. That's for moving hives. It is for moving a super.
Yeah, and when you're out on site looking like a bunch of bozos standing around a hive trying to get this contraption to lift a hive and backwards and forwards, and I'm like, dude, it just won't.
Yeah, we spent, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
At least.
Yeah,
at least.
Playing with this stupid thing.
And we had an audience, too,
yeah.
because, you can never not.
Yeah.
You're never not going to do that without an audience. So
No. And we ended up just muscling it.
Just muscling. Straps.
Yeah.
Straps are your friend. So if anybody out there is listening and wants to move some hives, the commercial guys usually during the day because they work during the day, but we always do it in the evening after all the flyers return so we can maximize our yields and don't lose any flyers out in the field. So this is at a dusk activity. We close up entrances. We strap them together, strap up the hive. We take the telescoping cover off with an inner cover, leave the inner cover on. And then we use a ratchet strap the whole box together because you never know what's going to happen. And keeping that whole stack together is going to be to your benefit.
I have moved one actually out here at my house without a ratchet strap, thinking it's not that heavy of a hive.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. And as soon as the top portion of that hive slips off, takes a minor slip, the bees get real upset. And it didn't help that it was a really angry hive to start with.
Yeah.
And I will never try to move something without ratchet strapping it down first.
So the first two, we backed the pickup truck right up to them, and we had to move them all of about 5 feet from the stand into the back of the pickup truck, loaded up the stands, and they were kind of on spindly legs, so I was worried about their drive home in the car because this was two deeps and then a third deep on top of that, which is the flow hive, which we'll talk about in a minute. So it was kind of a stack. I mean, it was probably 4 foot tall.
Yeah. And
I was concerned about it tipping over, so I strapped it all together. But our second set, that was an entirely different fiasco.
That was. I have a IOU to Steve that I will have to pay off for that.
So he's like, yeah, the access is a little difficult, and I thought, well, that means he's like, well, we'll have to. It's off in the woods a bit, and I'm like, oh, okay. And owning the property that I have, owning goats, I converted a wheelbarrow into what we call a grain cart. So instead of a wheelbarrow-shaped bin on a pair of handles and a wheel, I built a flat platform with a back.
It's like an L.
It's like an L. And it's good for throwing a hay bale on or a couple of feed sacks. Mostly it's hay bales, right? It's good square, easy to move a hay bale around.
Turns out it's good for moving hives too.
And I've done a lot of hive moving out of mine because my hives are probably 100 feet down a hill of my property to the house. So when I take honey, I stack my honey supers on that, and then I run them up the hill on that. And so it's basically a wheelbarrow for all intents and purposes. But it allows you to strap a square box to it. And so I was like, oh, I'll bring that. And boy, if we hadn't had that, we would have been in a world of hurt.
Hold on. The night it had been raining. Severe storms had gone through the area.
And dumped about a half inch of rain in about an hour.
And it was 100% humidity.
It was.
And probably 90 degrees.
It
felt like 90 degrees.
It felt like 90 degrees. It was probably only about 80.
But it was miserably hot.
It was wet.
It was wet.
It was thick.
Hot, and it was down a hill Like
A hill is being generous, sir.
It's like a 30 degree slope, 40-degree slope.
Listen, we could not walk down it without slipping in the mud.
That's true. But the hill was made of clay. And so couldn't walk down it without.
And this is not a small hill. This was probably 30 feet elevation.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
And so, like, the hills on my property aren't as steep, but they're kind of short. It's like terraced, right?
Well,
And
we're
this
in
was
Illinois too, right? You don't have a lot of hills. You
yeah,
have some, but not a lot.
you know,
But
creek,
anyway,
creek edges.
yeah.
So I send the cart sailing down in front of me, and then I slip down the hill, slip and slide down the hill.
Hold on. To be fair, before you got there, I lifted one by myself.
You did.
And walked it up the hill.
I don't understand how.
And I that was about all. I was like, okay, I'm quitting. We're done. Because that's not gonna happen.
So I get there, and there's already a hive in the back of the truck. And I'm like, where did that one come from? He's like, well, I already brought one up. But this was the easiest one. And then he's like, the purple one down there. He's like, you're going to want a suit. The purple one's spicy. And I was like, man, I really wasn't feeling a suit because, you know, it's hot. But I go up and get the suit.
It's also 10 o'clock at night.
So
all the
started at like 9.
Everyone's at home.
Yeah. And so we get down there. We get everything strapped up. We get it lifted onto the cart. I strap it to the cart. And then we get over to the hill. And he's like, so what's the plan? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm like, I'm going to be at the bottom end. And I got to thinking about it. I'm like, really, like when we move, so we did the same event moving the hive that I brought home from the other two that were easy down my property. And we did that with, I used the wife. She just put a hand on the hive to help steady it. And I'm like, and she can walk right next to me because our yard is maintained and it's not that big of a deal. And I thought, well, there's no way that you're going to be able to maintain footing and provide any kind of stability to this contraption that we have going up this cliff. And so I thought, well, you know, if we were smart, the way this probably would be done is like one guy'd be in the front pulling and the other guy in the back would just be like, just keep the hive upright, right? Just keep it from tipping over. And if you can provide any kind of push to do that. So then I got to thinking, well, we got another ratchet strap.
Well, and then somebody's got to keep their feet, right?
Yeah.
The guy in the back, because there wasn't one of those that we got up the hill that we both kept our feet the whole time.
No.
Like I fell down, or Steve fell down the whole, at least once on every single one.
Yeah. There's 3 we had to bring up the hill, 4 total, but you walked the one up. And so we strapped to the front of the wheelbarrow contraption, the cart, and then I was like, all right, your job is to go up first and pull, and then we get about halfway up. The bottom third was easy. The middle third was the real difficult part, and the top third, it leveled out a little bit.
Bad, yeah.
It wasn't too bad, and I think that was just because I was still on the bottom while you were in the mid, and then once you were all the way up to the top, I was still on the last third. So It was that middle third that was really trying, and that was when we'd have to stop and re-get our footing, then 1, 2, 3, and give it a big push.
Push and pull, yeah.
But so moving hives, that's a real thing, guys. And you know, if you're not a commercial guy and got the fancy overhead crane,
and easy access,
you know, get you some sort of cart or something strapped to the cart.
And your buddy too, because it's not
a two-person job for
sure. It's not a one-person thing. Yeah.
But they did come with flow hives. Our first two, we picked up came with flow hives. I know. When this product hit the market, maybe 10 years ago, they kickstarted it?
I don't know if it was 10 years. That feels, I have a hard time with time. So, you know, that feels like way longer than it was, but you're probably right.
It was never a product I was really excited about.
It was re-kickstarted, I think, right? Because realistically, they've been around for a really long time. They just changed the material, and so now, and then they launched a Kickstarter, so they did a better job of better material. It caught up to the times, and they had a Kickstarter that supported it compared to what they had before.
I know everybody at the time was like, "Oh man, are you going to get one of these?" I'm like, "Man, this is a solution looking for a problem." And in terms of beekeeping, it's just not a problem I have. Like taking honey is one of the highlights of my beekeeping year, right? Like all my hard work and effort really kind of goes up to that. And yeah, as a hobbyist, I don't have like 100 hives to do. Right, so like it's just enough for me to feel like it's an afternoon project on a July 4th weekend is always when it's one for me. I usually have some friends over. They want to be part of the process. They want to see how it works, everybody can get their hand in it, right? And so, as a whole, this was never a product that I was super excited about. It never seemed to be an issue for me. There was a guy in our club who thinks they're the best thing since sliced bread and swears by them.
Yeah, he might be actually listening.
And, he kind of mentioned some of the downsides, like, what happens if you don't use a queen excluder, or if your queen excluder doesn't quite exclude like it's supposed to.
Yeah, you got a bent queen excluder. Which,
yeah.
Change your queen excluders out every 2 or 3 years is what I would suggest.
Or if you're using the plastic ones probably don't bend like the metal rod ones, but.
No, they wear the bees' wings out pretty fast, though.
Yeah. So now when we're like, hey, it's kind of hard to sort of, crap on the product or downplay it if you don't have an experience with it.
Or even talk to it, right?
Right. Because, it's probably one of the most frequently asked questions from general non-beekeeping public. Hey, you got one of all the time, right?
All the time.
And sort of wanting to expand my beekeeping knowledge and experience, you said, hey, this person is wanting to get out of beekeeping and they have their hives to sell, and so do you want one of these? And I'm like, for that price, I will buy into having a flow hive, and I'll actually have some experience with it, and then I can actually speak to, positives and negatives and how's it going. And so far, the hive I put it on needed to be expanded at the time. The hive I got was queenless, and I had a swarm capture that was needed to expand, and so I just newspapered them all.
We knew that it swarmed, though.
Yeah.
I had been there when it swarmed, and I was like, oh, there's this swarm from the hive. There it goes. I can watch it fly away.
So mine are, I just took the side panel off of mine. It's kind of nice that it's got the little panels that you can
review.
Do the viewing with. My wife was thinking about shooting some video for the Facebook or YouTube or whatever. So mine appear to be actively working it. However, they don't appear to be putting any honey in it. They seem to be like polishing cells and doing things like that.
That's what mine were doing last time. And I wonder if it's a flow issue or what's going on.
Yeah.
They're running around in it is basically what's happening.
Yep.
And
so long term, I'm sure we'll revisit this as a topic on the podcast here as we get some more experience with it, and it would be interesting. If you've got some ideas about it, leave us some feedback. About if you have one and if you've liked it, and positives and negatives associated with it.
Tricks and tips on it. We're happy to hear.
That's the other thing is I have no idea how the thing works. So I guess I'm going to be looking up some videos or something on how that works. The other thing we've been dealing with around the yard, I have had a hive out at the apiary that has been at the apiary for probably 4 or 5 years. And within the past year or so, it was just performing poorly.
This is the club apiary, though.
The club apiary.
Yep.
Just performing poorly. And it had all the signs of being problematic with something. EFB and parasitic mite syndrome are almost identical in look. I have had both in the past, so I have some experience in being able to identify both parasitic mite syndrome associated with deformed wing virus. I have seen that. I have treated for it in the past. I'm like, oh, I better get me a real mite treatment on there. But the population here just didn't take off in the spring. Real spotty brood, and the inspector, our state inspector, was out for our field day, and he has one of the test kits. I guess they're shipping the state inspector with these little test kits that look like it's kind of like a COVID test looking thing. If you've gotten those in the mail and used them, you swab, and then there's a liquid, and you mix it together, and then you put a droplet on a little pregnancy tester looking thing. Right, and two lines, you're COVID positive. 2 lines, you're pregnant. 2 lines, you get EFB, and it came up positive. So the plan for that hive is to throw it on the burn pile. It came up in my apiary at home probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was before
mine too. It came up in mine. Mine came in with a swarm capture.
Yeah.
And it was a little tiny swarm capture, and like softball size tiny. and they weren't acting right to start, and it never did.
And I've asked a lot of people in the beekeeping community if they've run across it and what's their experience with it. Some people say that they've treated for it and were able to resolve the issue that way. Other people say that they've had it show up and then it resolved on its own. I don't know what that means. But the stuff I had at my property, the hives, like if I take a mental accounting of what boxes, what hives had the problem, I did try to treat. I have a large animal vet, and after getting a diagnosis the last time, I was able to provide him with my paperwork with a positive diagnosis, and then he wrote me a script for the antibiotic that they happened to give for other stuff in the animal world. And I felt like that was effective in a short-term treatment.
But I remember you getting that script, and you had to cut it down.
Yeah, because
you had to go do the math and do moles and cut it down
Yep.
and dissolve it in powdered sugar.
Yeah, because the treatment with that, there's not a lot of good information there because, again, it's not a process that is intended for the general beekeeper to undergo. You have to have access to the vet in order to get the antibiotic in the first place. It's a powdered antibiotic, which is intended. The version I got, which I understand is the version that everybody gets, is a version that's intended for to be added to cattle feed and things like that for when there's issues in herds and things. Yes, it did seem to have a positive impact on the hive, but then about 2 brood cycles later, it would start getting spotty again. And so I didn't feel like it actually was able to successfully heal out of the bacterial problems of the EFB. And the state inspector also has stories of visiting sites that were treating with antibiotic on their hives because of EFB. And they're like, well, we just treat. And they're like, well, if you stop treating, what happens? And they're like, well, the hives start doing poorly again. And essentially, you're just suppressing the issue. And so eventually at my property, those hives I stopped treating, and they basically died over winter or whatever, and then I replaced that equipment. So I essentially did the same thing. I essentially got rid of the bees and the equipment, and I haven't had that problem since.
So I had a similar issue with it. I treated, because of your problems with it, it was around the same time. I think I treated for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. I treated for a long period of time, thinking, if it's a bacterial infection, I'll treat for a longer period of time. That way they'll get over it.
Right.
And they did. They kind of bounced around, and then by that time we're getting into summer and fall. I stopped treating. They didn't do quite as well. It didn't really totally regress.
Right.
And then as it got close to fall, then they really kind of fell apart.
And I think, I don't know if that's 100% EFB problematic related. I have since been in talks given by people talking about the gut health of the bee and how the antibiotics for the gut health of the bee is really problematic in the overall flora of biome of bacteria that is in a hive that's beneficial. And so when you, much like our gut biology, right, there are significant changes to our biology in our bodies from our own gut diversity. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so, everybody loves the probiotics, right? And so I wonder if the struggle in the hives after the application of the antibiotics there is really something to be said about missing that flora of throughout the hive.
Yeah.
And how that missing that is going to negatively impact the hive. So
I think so.
The short version is, I just end up getting rid of the hive.
So I didn't get rid of the boxes. I torched the boxes.
Yep.
But I burned all the frames.
Yep.
And that fixed, quote unquote, air quotes, fixed
Yep.
my problem. Right.
Yep.
That's what ended up resolving it for me. I just had one that today. Actually, I burned the frames. It's been struggling along. It did really well, and all of a sudden it was laying like a poorly mated queen.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, okay, they'll requeen her. So they requeened her, and she was poorly mated again, or acting very poorly mated, and I was starting to get things like holes in the cappings and things like that, and the frames were relatively old, 2021 frames that I marked, and I thought, I'm not going to mess with this. So I didn't reuse the frames. I just burned them. We had a fire going by anyway because we're burning brushes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I burned them, and that was kind of shocking for my family, my parents, my parents love my bees. They go out and look at them all the time. So if I do something drastic like that, I have 50 questions. But for me, I was done messing with that hive. I tried to requeen it. I've put brood into it. I've done all kinds of stuff. I'm done. So.
And it sort of highlights the difference between, your hobbyist ones and twosy kind of person and the commercial operation that's running hundreds, if not thousands of hives, right? You just don't have the time to try to limp along one of these problematic hives. And if it's fundamentally problematic, there's a big risk that it'll spread throughout your apiary, and then you're looking at some real financial losses.
So that was my big fear, right? Is that
because
this stuff spreads?
Yeah, you're no longer dealing with ones and twosies.
No, and if it moves to, and this location has at least 50 hives in the property. If it spread to all 50 hives, that's a problem.
Yep. Speaking of having a good-sized apiary and needing help, I understand that you have a new intern working out in the apiary.
Yeah, he's. I was against it because I don't like. Well, Steve can tell you. There's not many people I let in my apiary to just mess around. I don't like it. I don't want them to messing with stuff and breaking something so I limit the number of people there. But my wife was getting a little tired of having to hold the camera when I'm asking her to video stuff or take pictures or spinning the extractor because I have a soft spot in my heart for my hand crank extractor. I have an electric one.
It's a nice one.
A nice electric one.
Yeah.
A big one. And it sits in the corner, and it doesn't usually get used because I really like extracting my hives with different into different buckets for different flavors because they really do have different flavors.
No blending here at River Road Apiary.
No, there is. We have a blended. But the blended is from the cappings. So that's capping honey.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was somebody that he's out there. Benjamin's his name. He probably doesn't listen to the podcast. But he was looking for a job for an internship. He's an environmental science guy.
Early college, late high school. What is
late college? He just graduated, and he's
okay.
looking for hands-on experience with anything environmental, animal husbandry. He's actually what he specifically was looking for.
Oh man, I know a guy who's got some goats.
That's true. I do. I told him that too. So he's looking for jobs. He's got a bunch of interviews lined up. He's doing really good. He hasn't been stung yet. So we were talking about it today. It's been a week, about time that we get stung just to see. He's allergic to a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe you might and need to see if you're allergic to honeybees or not. That'd be important for you to know. I do have an EpiPen on site for just in case.
Yeah.
And being stung your first time, I remember my first time. My first time actually wasn't bad. I remember the first time it was bad.
Yeah.
That was not a good experience.
Yeah.
So, I've told him, I'm like, this is not going to be a great experience. I'm like, we need to do it when you have nothing planned, and we need to do it in your offhand that you don't use for something, or something along those lines.
Wait, you're not going to give him on the lip or on the nose, the tip of the nose, right there, the tip of the nose,
inside of the nose.
Your eyes just water,
no.
and you can smell the bananas, taste the bananas.
I'm not going to do the tip of the finger either.
Oh,
that one's pretty rough.
How about the back of the hand so it swells up?
Well, I probably actually will do. I'm trying to decide, back of the hand or the arm.
How about the flabby bit inside of your arm, just where your sleeve is, when you're wearing short sleeves and not the full suit?
My personal least favorite is the leg.
Yeah,
because you can feel them crawling up your leg, and you know you're going to get stung, and you're just waiting for. It's just the tension on it is painful. So yeah, there's the YouTube guy. I forgot what he does, but he goes and gets stung by different insects.
Oh yeah,
and
that does not sound like a fun show.
No, well, it's
maybe it's fun to watch.
It's kind of fun to watch it.
Okay.
Bullet ants. He got stung by bullet ants. Stuff like that is kind of.
Okay.
humorous to watch. But he does it just to see, what's the most painful thing to get stung by. And so we might have to get him stung here. He's agreed to get stung. Well, let me put it that way. But so far, super useful. And we're extracting honey. He's bottling honey. He's getting into hives. The goal is an hour in the hives every day that he's there.
Okay.
And I figure after about 8 hours, I can go and say, "Hey, I need you to go check hive. I'm gonna start over here. You start over there, and you raise your hand if you got problems."
And what's your experience with working with the new generation of kids these days? This is the
new thing for. I have a nephew that's that age. And I would say their hands-on experience in the world is limited. They're like.
And did you give him some reading material?
I did. I gave him Beekeeping for Dummies. Not as a dig, but because that's a
great book.
Fundamentally good book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Beekeeping for Dummies, and the other one is Backyard Beekeeper. Backyard Beekeeper, also fundamentally one of the better.
And so have you been testing him in his beekeeping journey?
He asks lots of questions,
yeah,
which suggests to me that he's either watching videos or reading the book or both.
Yeah.
So am I testing him? Not really. I guess you could say I'm testing him, right? We pull out frames. I say, Here's a frame. Tell me what you see. He actually saw his first queens, spotted his first queens.
Yeah. Awesome.
So that is like I think that's a milestone. Now,
I mean,
it's true that I found the queen on it first, and I said, "Hey, take a look at this frame."
leading the witness, Your Honor.
It's all right, but he still found them, right? And that's an important part of beekeeping. And he can spot drones. That's the one he'll pull out. Oh, it's a drone. Yep, it's a drone. Good job.
It's the eggs. It's the eggs. The big one.
Right? The eggs are the big one, and he spots those too. I mean, to be 22 years old again and have 22-year-old eyes.
It'd be nice as I look through my reading glasses that I never had to wear before a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The other thing we did around the yard this week was we grafted.
Yeah.
This is the second time we've done this.
Successfully grafted, we should say.
we did this 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about it on the previous episode.
And we kind of
those
failed.
Did not take.
Yep. I actually had Steve go through the hive this time before we moved those grafts over, and you found
a little teeny tiny queen.
A little tiny queen.
A little tiny queen.
And I was shocked. The house it was tiny.
And I'm like, he's like, hey, go through this. And honestly, I'm like, I knew the importance of ensuring. Well, I knew that our grass had failed the last time, which I thought was odd. B, I know we've had previous experience with getting a queen in our cell builder colony, which is a no-no because the grass will fail every time. So I knew the importance of ensuring that we were queen free,
but their behavior for me was the big thing.
Yeah, they were not buzzing, and you're like they're acting like they have a queen, is what you told me.
Yep.
And so I felt really like I need to put all of my beekeeping skills in play here to really ensure that this hive comes up clean. And on the third, so I'm really paying attention to the bee behavior.
I walked away because I didn't want you to feel rushed. I had other stuff to do to start with, but I didn't want you to feel rushed. And I was like, I really, really want him to go through this.
And so on the third frame, like I'm really looking at bee behavior, trying to look for, because there was no eggs anywhere. So it wasn't like she was laying, but what I'm looking for was bee behavior, right? How are the workers behaving? I'm looking for that retinue, right? That when they're all focused around something, they point, right? And, it's a podcast, but I'm using my hands and they're pointing at each other, right? And I'm really looking for that behavior because that's how I'm probably going to find her, right? Especially if she's virgin or if she's just back from mating flights and she's not laid yet, right? And it was with that, looking for that behavior on a frame that I spotted a little tiny bee with the real nice round thorax right on the back.
By little tiny, I mean she was half the size of the workers.
I would say she was
Maybe
she was the
3/4.
size of a worker, but
Yeah.
the difference was that
The round.
the round dot thorax, right? It's sort of like once you know what you're looking for, like you can spot her as a queen. And so I called you over. I'm like, hey, I'm pretty sure that's that right there. And he's like, I agree, and you snatched her up. And
Yeah, I put her
later,
I go and put all of those queens. Any queen that I kill, I throw them into
alcohol.
I have
Yeah.
I have a container of alcohol with all my queens floating in it. I'm sure that
for some queen
yeah.
pheromone trapping
Yeah,
awesomeness.
I'm sure somebody will find it and be like, "Why is he murdering bees?"
So we manually grafted, but we also have, and I have the kit. I bought a kit. It's the QC100 kit, which is like if you could probably Google this if you're listening to this right now, or if you're a beekeeper and you've seen queen wearing equipment. It's the little square plastic. It's like a 1 inch thick, and it's like a 5x5 square. And
It's the same width as a frame, actually. So that's what it's made for. It's to be the same width as a frame.
And the idea is that you can put they look like little hollow eraser tips. They're little brown cups.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And they're about the size of an eraser tip. And if you hollowed it out, so it's a little cup, and you put those little brown cups into this plastic frame thing, and on the back side, and on the front side is sort of an open hollow area. It's got some holes in it. Each hole represents a cell for the queen, a simulated cell.
Yep.
And the idea is that you catch your queen, you put her in the front side, and after some period of time, she will have gone through there and stuck her butt in each one of those cells and did the hard part of moving an egg to each one of those little eraser cups for you.
110 of them are in there. We looked at it earlier.
Yep. And so the idea is that you could do this. You could capture your queen, put her in there, and then like there's a whole bunch of supporting hardware, right? Once you take your cups out and you put them in the little cup holder, and then the cup holder goes on the bar, and then they draw that out into a cell, and they come with the queen clip cages, the hair clip roller cages. Like it's all system, right? And that system has been around for a while. I probably I think I remember seeing it in the catalog when I started back in 2008. And I remember it being really expensive. You looked it up before we started the show today. It was $100 and $125 from Man Lake. But I remember looking at those and like, man, that's a lot of money for a bunch of plastic bits. And then, thanks to China, they low cost everything, and stuff showed up on Amazon. And I don't know, probably 4 or 5 years ago when we did our first IQI class, when we learned how to graft, I was like, you know what, I'm going to take the opportunity to finally buy one of these kits. And I think I bought mine for like $30 or $40. And then when you bought out the equipment that we were just talking about before with the hive mover or wannabe hive mover, a bunch of that equipment came in that kit and that equipment also. And so we successfully put that to use. Well, we put that to use, and it was very successful. She has laid an egg in every single one of those cups.
Yeah, I think there was like 10 that I went through that she hadn't. Now, after you've gone and put like 30 or 40 of those cups in, you're like,
I'm done.
Okay.
Because here's the thing.
I don't have the population to build.
Well, yeah, and so like manually grafting, we spent probably an hour out in the apiary looking for a frame of open brood from a hive that we liked, right? And we ended up getting caught up in a bunch of beekeeping activities out in the apiary, as one does when you're out in the apiary. We finally pulled a frame together, but by now it's an hour after we had planned to start. We're both hot and sweaty. We come into the garage. We got a frame holder set up, which yours truly built. Really nice frame holder. And you got to get, it's a thing, right? Grafting is a thing. You got to get relaxed. It's a super high concentration activity. You got to have steady hands. You've got a nice collection of different grafting tools to try. I really don't know how you're supposed to use some of them. I tried to use almost all of the ones we have in a collection, and some of them looked like they'd be easy to use. Some of them had great visibility, but I could not figure out how to get my little larva to stay on the little spoon of like the European, the German one.
The German one I've actually successfully used. The U.S. one.
The U.S. one with the little, it's got a little teeny tiny tongue. You press the lever and a little teeny tiny tongue sticks out
and
the
I know
bottom.
there's people that love that. And
I mean, it had great visibility, right?
And I can't get it to stick.
Yeah. So like,
issue.
it's so thin and dainty, right? So you can get it at the very edge of the cell, which means you got great visibility to see what you're doing. And you press the little lever, and the little tongue comes flicking out. And boy, I can chase that larva all the way around on the bottom of the cell, but I cannot, for the life of me, get it scooped up. And then I'm rolling the larva up the side of the cell, and I'm like, I know that's not going to be good for the larva.
I wonder if we should like hit it with some sandpaper or something to rough it up.
I don't know.
It's one of those. I had the same issue. I couldn't get it. Now the German one, I have no issue with.
Yeah.
I scoop underneath.
Yeah.
And then you just reverse that motion.
Yeah.
But the
by
US
far,
one, the Chinese one is
the cheap. Like you can get like a 50 pack for like $10 on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I think I have some natural ones because I think they make a.
We had some hand chosen plastic ones that came with the gear.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar, this is like a little
plunger.
Yeah, it looks like a mechanical pencil. It's about half the size of a mechanical pencil, and at the end of it is like a little piece of reed or animal horn or something, and it's flexible. It's been shaved or sliced or something.
It's maybe your finger width thickness. Or fingernail thickness.
Yeah, but then it tapers down to like a sheet of paper, right?
Yeah, it does.
And I find to me the nice flexible one that I can get down in the cell with the least amount of effort to make it bend and whoop up underneath and then the larva kind of sticks to that little tongue, and then you just pull them back out, and then it's got a little plunger that kind of pushes a little piece of bamboo down, and it kind of bloop, pushes the larva off down into the cell.
I'm not as picky on those. I really wish I could figure out the U.S. one because I think that would be fast. I think that would be because of the visibility it provides.
Right.
And I just think it'd be super fast once you got going.
So I started and I did, I don't know, 3 or 4, and I was struggling, and you were like, all right, tap out. And then you did the rest of the frame.
Yep.
And I just relaxed and stood in front of the air conditioner and cooled off and had a drink, and then went back, and I was like, well, we got one frame, and we had like 15 cells on a we're using Easy Beezy cups, in case we didn't mention that. So this is the Easy Beezy cups that we're hand grafting into on a little rail, and then we only put two rails of the Easy Beezy cups into the cell builder.
Yeah.
And so that's like 30 queen cells, and then you're like, hey, if I didn't do a really good job, right, I smushed some of my larvae, maybe 3/4 take. So if you move 30, then, maybe 2/3 take. So you got 20 cells, and, if you've got 20 peanuts, 20 queen cells to care for, right, like it's a pretty good size cell builder to raise those. But the other question is, what are you going to do with all the queens, right? You got to mate those.
Yep.
Unless you're selling virgin queens. And to mate those, you got to have queen castles, which takes us nicely into the second activity we did, which was we made some queen castles. So we took some leftover old equipment that had some rotten corners, and I cut them down on the table saw. We cut about 2 inches off the edge, whatever edge was rotten. Some were top, most of them were bottoms.
Most were bottoms.
And then we bought 1x8s. We cut a corresponding 2-inch strip off of those, and we screwed that to the box to make it back to the same full height. And then we took the 1x6s. They formed the tops and took some 1/2-inch plywood and made dividers. So we made one 10-frame box with 2 1/2-inch dividers.
Yeah, 2 1/2 into 3. So three sections.
3 sections, and each section holds 3 frames.
Yep.
So it's a 3-frame queen castle. And then we took the bottom boards and we cut notches, and we permanently attached a entrance reducer to the front underneath the box. And then so we give a front entrance, and then we cut notches into the sides of the bottom board lip on both the left and right side. Yeah. So we have an entrance on the left side, the right side, and the middle out front. And that's our entrances for our 3 cavities. And so that's what we'll move the queen cells to for our mating, our queen castles, or mating nukes is another name for them.
Yeah. I have the little tiny mating nukes.
The styrofoam ones, the mini mating nukes.
I don't like them. I just hate working with them. And
so it took us an afternoon. It was 4 or 5 hours of sitting around in the garage and the driveway, cutting up plywood, cutting up boxes, screwing stuff together. It was a good project for two buddies and the two beekeeping buddies
Yep.
in the yard to do. Listened to some tunes, had a good time. Weather was nice, decent. But we only wound up with, we built 5 and the yard had 1. So that's 6 times 3 is 18 queens.
Yeah.
So we can currently service 18 queens. It's going to take them about 2 weeks to determine whether or not they're laying between when your cell's ripe and needs to be moved over to that box, and when you can verify she's laying, it's time to be sold or moved to a hive, right? So for 2 weeks, those 18 boxes are filled up. So you can really start to put on the schedule how many times I can raise, like how many queens can I raise based on how many queen cell builders do I have.
We're in the Midwest, so what ends up happening in like August is that our dragonflies come out, and dragonflies love eating queens. Also, we have some flycatchers out here that sit in my yard, and I don't mind it when they're eating my bees, but I don't like it when they eat my queens.
Mating flights are dangerous.
Yeah.
So hand grafting 18, it was doable. I don't know who was going to be making use of 100 little cups of,
I don't know, but it took me. So you said when we grafted, it took us I would say maybe 45 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
It took me maybe 20 minutes
to find the queen.
To find the queen took me like 5 minutes because I actually looked for a queen because this is the first time we've used it.
Yeah.
So I had a 6/6 hive.
Yep.
That's got a new queen in it, and I thought, all right, we're gonna grab her. I found her 5 minutes. It was third frame. I pulled her, put her in the thing. But
you had prepped your frame beforehand.
Yeah, prepped the frame beforehand.
So you kind of attached it to one of your an empty piece of foundation.
Yeah, I cut a piece of foundation so that this sits inside of it, and then rubber band it in there. Left her there for 3 days.
Yep.
She laid every single one full.
Yep.
Released her. Put everything back together. Released her. Took that empty box back over to the house.
Yep.
And in 15 minutes, I had
moved them over. Yeah. So clearly, this system, like if you're new to grafting and you're having trouble manually grafting and you can't see, like it's rough, guys. Like it's a real thing. It's a real skill. Like this for like what it is on Amazon or some of the other online sources these days. Like it seems to be a no-brainer if you're wanting to raise some queens and you're not wanting to do just regular on-the-spot queen rearing, notching some cells and moving some frames, letting them draw their own way. Yeah. If you want to do quote-unquote grafting, like this seems to be the way to really go about doing it.
This is certainly easier. It was way easier.
Now, you're going to have, like I said, a bunch of supporting equipment to go with it in terms of queen cell builder, mating nukes and stuff like that.
Other hives to pull stuff from.
Yeah.
So this is not I have 2 hives, I'm going to raise my own queens.
Well, I mean, you can make 1 or 2 queens, but you're not going to make.
But if you're going to do that, I would do on the spot notch. I would notch a frame
exactly,
and then move it over. And
because
make a little
to support like each one of those queen castles needs 3 frames, and you just can't move over empty frames. It has to be like a frame of cat brood. So you got to have, 18, 20, 30 frames of cat brood, which means you got to pull brood. Like you can't. I guess if you're going to tear down a complete hive, maybe, but like
if you're going to do that early in the season, right now though, it's not early in the season.
Right,
we're like mid-season.
So you're pulling 1 or 2 frames out of your strongest hives. Because there's in your apiary, we were going through some stuff. There were still some strugglers, some splits from earlier in the spring that are just starting to get started. Like they don't have a lot of resources to rob from. So
yep, exactly.
We're carrying on deeper into the podcast here. We might skip our In the News segment. A real quick mention, though, that we do have coming up in August, Hiverama in St. Louis, the little conference we went to last year was their first year.
Yep, that was good. I really liked the speakers. They had variety of speakers and some pretty in-depth speakers. Lunch was okay. It was a small venue, so that was really cool.
Yeah, it was really good. I guess that's coming up in August. They don't have a lot of new details on what the 2024 year is going to bring, but hopefully it's going to be good. ISBA, our local Illinois State Beekeeping Association, is going to be having their yearly get-together meeting thing this coming weekend, which you will have been in the past by the time this is published, but This is kind of the time of year for some of the mid to late year beekeeping conferences. So check the schedule in your area to see what's going on and get out there and attend, meet up with some beekeeping buddies and see what's going on in the beekeeping world. The Honeybee Hotline is where we take questions from students and people who leave us messages and have questions about beekeeping. I'm sure you had plenty from your intern. I have a couple from my students.
Yeah.
Anything you want to talk about?
Well, actually, the one that I kind of wanted to talk about was a request for a hive.
Okay.
From a guy.
This is sort of in parallel with your beekeeping services that you provide as part of the business?
Yeah, a little bit. So really what happened was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had some documents that I put out that said honeybees will increase soybean yield by like 20%. And so this guy's a farmer. He wanted bees on his property because he has a small orchard. And I was there talking to him about it, and he grows soybeans. He has like a massive field of soybeans. And so he's my age, and I was kind of commiserating to him. I said, hey, I'm really happy that you're having a hive out here. You're going to be taking care of it, right? This is not me managing this. And he was, yeah, he's going to take care of it. And I told him about this yield, and I said, if you have any insight on how you can get farmers interested in this, it'd be really helpful because I'd really like to see science in action, right? We've got things written out there about it, but let's see it. And so he was really excited about it. So he asked for it, and I quoted him for a suit and some equipment, and I quoted $700 for a full hive, including a stand, bees. The bees right now are in a single deep, so it's a full, and by single deep I mean it's a full 10 frame of bees.
10 frame, sure.
And they all have as of today they all have double deeps on them, and so I quoted him, and it was I said $700, which I thought was a good price.
Yeah, I mean between the cost of the woodenware and the stand and the cost of a suit, even from a low cost overseas supplier, right?
It's a featherlight suit, so it's a vented suit.
Yeah.
He'd see me wear. He asked for one, so he still wants to buy the suit, right? But the hive and the other equipment was. He said it's just too much.
That doesn't sound like there's a lot of meat there on that. It's not like you're.
No, I wasn't
making
gouging
it.
him.
No.
And the hives pretty much. I've got my hives thinned down to the hives that I like.
Sure.
Pretty much. I've got 2 or 3 that I still. They're not my favorite
Customers,
right
sure, yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I thought that was a pretty good deal, but maybe I think it's a view on hobbies, right? What are you going to spend on a hobby?
Or like, how hard did you sell the edition, right? Because $700 to $1,000 for a guy who's got a $40,000 or $50,000 fuel bill for his farm, like that's like pocket, like I want to say pocket change, right? Some people are going to really scoff at that, but if a guy is working 2,000 to 3,000 acres of row crops, right? Their yearly budget's probably in the millions, right? So what's $700 for something that could potentially increase your yield, but also you're going to get some honey off of, maybe not this year, but if you take care of them, that'll make. I mean, that's how I'm paying for my hobby is
honey,
is the honey sales.
Honey sales, and mine is really more honey sales and outreach and classes like talking. So right now my standing fee for doing a talk for an hour for a group is $65.
But this just seems like what anybody in today's economics, in 2024, in terms of what groceries are and what an hour of professional time is worth, right?
Yeah.
You get an electrician or a plumber into your house for less than $65 an hour?
No, they won't even knock on your front door for that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd like to think that what we bring to the table in terms of professional information and service is equivalent to any other the technical trades.
Yeah, I've certainly spent. I've almost spent more time on learning about beekeeping now than I was spent in, well, certainly in college and high school.
Yeah.
Like I just need another 6 years, and it'll be college, high school, and my whole education, right?
Yeah. There you go.
So,
Well, we're going to wrap it up here where we talk about what's going to be coming up in the next week or two between now and when we get together again. I know for me, the July 4th weekend is rapidly approaching, which is when I typically take some honey. I'm pretty sure I've got some honey on the hives to take. I don't know how my actual honey supers are. I think I had a hive, my large hive, that swarmed earlier in the spring. It was real interested in backfilling my deeps with honey, which I've had in the past. So I think I'm going to be struggling with a deep full of honey instead of some of my honey supers, but I'll get it out of there.
yeah,
She's laying though. They did requeen, so
I've been pulling honey off of mine and then putting them back on wet.
yep.
Um,
How many pounds have you harvested so far?
I would guess about 200.
All yours, or for some customers too?
Just mine. Just mine's about 200, maybe closer to 300, and then for customers, probably another 100, about 100 for customers,
Yeah.
and I probably will harvest at least one customer will probably have another 100 pounds all by themselves. They've got a 6 foot tall stack of hives that I put on supers,
Yeah.
that I put on, and they were all wet because the hive was so full, and I had to borrow from other hives to get it so it wouldn't swarm. And it's bearding right now. The beard on front of it's pretty impressive.
And so I think the other activity that I'm really focused on this time of year is, did I have any swarms late May, early June that I did or didn't know about? And, I'm going to be opening up hives in the next week to 2 weeks and, finding, and what am I going to be finding? Am I going to be finding that they're lacking any brood, because they didn't requeen well, and so I'm going to be queenless, going in July, mid-July, as typically I've been there before, in the past where it's been July into August that I'm looking for queens, which is why we typically get to grafting we always talk about trying to do it earlier, so we've got more queens ready to go, but the reality is it seems like it's always about this time of year that we've done this in the past, because we know in the next 2 weeks to a month we'll get the call for help. I need a queen. I didn't realize my stuff swarmed and didn't or they decided to kill the queen for whatever reason, and now I'm queenless and I need a queen is certainly a thing.
It is a big thing. I get lots of calls on it, and I think this is the best year. We're ahead of the curve this year. We've done the best so far in getting queens ready this year than we have ever in the past.
I would agree with that, but this is the year you have dedicated the most time and effort to this, given the opportunity to have the time to spend on it. So it sort of goes hand in hand, right? Like having the time to spend on it means you can actually spend the time doing it.
And because I talked to Big Talk earlier in the year about people knowing their VSH and stuff, I went and bought a UBO kit. So we'll have to talk about UBO. We'll do that next time.
Next episode. Tune in next episode for a discussion on UBO, which is a way to test for VSH, right?
Yeah, VSH. So I'm really interested in seeing what that shows. I think it's going to show not VSH bees.
I spent a hot minute looking at it before we came down and started talking about on the podcast, and I guess my initial knee-jerk reaction was it seems really expensive to do a test.
It is on the expensive end of stuff, but I really do think by producing better queens,
right,
we're going to have better hives, we're going to have better yields. It's just going to be better across the board for everyone.
And the reality is it brings value to what you're producing in terms of beekeeping, because you're going to have hard data that says, no, I've done the testing, here's my results, as opposed to someone who is raising and selling queens, and the reality is they just don't have any idea, right?
Yeah, they hope, right?
They hope.
Usually the response is, I hope they're good.
Right.
They're the parent genetics are good, so I hope they're good.
Yep. So that about wraps it up. We want to thank you for listening yet again to another episode of Beekeeping Buddies. I'm Steve.
I'm Luke.
Have a good one.